The small auditorium in El Paso, Texas, buzzed with anticipation. Bright stage lights illuminated two podiums, one for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, the progressive congresswoman from New York, and the other for Greg Abbott, the seasoned governor of Texas. The air was thick with tension as the moderator, Elena Rivera, a local journalist known for her sharp questions, stepped forward. The crowd, split between AOC's urban supporters and Abbott's conservative base, held their breath. This wasn't just a town hall on border security and community reform. It was a collision of ideals, and both figures were ready to stand their ground. What unfolded would leave the audience and soon the internet, grappling with questions neither side expected. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The El Paso Auditorium glowed under warm lights, with over 300 attendees packed into rows of folding chairs. Signs reading AOC for the People and Abbott Protects Texas dotted the crowd. Elena Rivera, in a crisp blazer, opened the event with a steady voice. Welcome to tonight's town hall on border security and community reform. Joining us are Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Governor Greg Abbott. The crowd erupted, half cheering for AOC, half for Abbott, reflecting the deep divide in the room. AOC stepped forward first, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a deep red blazer that stood out against the neutral backdrop. At 35, she was a progressive firebrand, representing New York's 14th district since 2019. Known for her advocacy on healthcare, climate, and immigrant rights, she'd recently introduced H.R. 3562, a bill to protect victims of non-consensual digital forgeries, just days ago. Her voice was clear, carrying the weight of her queen's upbringing. El Paso, I'm here because border communities deserve solutions that prioritize humanity, not division. We can secure our borders without tearing families apart. Her supporters clapped loudly, some holding up phones to capture her words. Greg Abbott followed, his gray hair neatly combed, dressed in a dark suit with a Texas flag pin on his lapel. At 67, he'd been Texas governor since 2015, a staunch Republican known for his hardline stance on border security. Just 2 days ago, he'd announced $46.3 million in grants for veterans and attended a peace officers' memorial service. His voice was firm, resonating with years of leadership. Texas has always stood strong on security. We've seen the consequences of federal inaction, and I'm here to protect our communities with real solutions. His base roared in approval, waving small Texas flags. Elena Rivera raised a hand for silence, her tone sharp. Let's begin with border security, a critical issue for El Paso. Governor Abbott, you've prioritized stringent policies. How do you respond to critics who say your approach lacks compassion? Abbott leaned into the microphone, his expression steady. Compassion doesn't mean open borders. I've secured billions for border safety, deployed the Texas National Guard, and built walls where the federal government failed. Just this week, I met with the FEMA Review Council to ensure our emergency responses are robust. My policies protect Texans and Americans first. His supporters cheered, but AOC's side murmured in dissent. Elena turned to AOC. Congresswoman, your approach emphasizes reform. How do you address concerns that it might weaken security? AOC's eyes were sharp, her voice calm but forceful. Security and humanity aren't opposites. I've co-sponsored bills like H.R. 3603 to ensure medical care in federal custody, because secure borders shouldn't mean neglecting people. In Queens, I've seen how fear-based policies fail. We need federal funding for communities, not just walls. Her supporters applauded, but Abbott's side shook their heads, some whispering about soft policies. The room's energy shifted as Elena posed the next question, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Let's talk community reform. Congresswoman, you've pushed for progressive changes. How do you ensure they work in a border state like Texas? AOC adjusted her stance, her tone reflective. Reform starts with listening. In New York, I've held town halls to fund youth programs and reduce crime. Here in El Paso, we need federal support for education and healthcare, real investments, not just enforcement. I introduced H.R. 3562 this week to protect vulnerable people online, showing we can innovate while addressing root causes. Her supporters nodded, but a few in Abbott's crowd scoffed, one muttering, "That's not Texas." Elena pivoted to Abbott. Governor, you've focused on law enforcement and economic stability. How do you respond to calls for broader social reforms? Abbott's voice was resolute. Texas thrives on stability, not untested experiments. I've brought jobs and safety to communities. $46.3 million for veterans this week alone proves my commitment. Progressive reforms often ignore local realities. In El Paso, we need strong policing and economic growth, not federal overreach. His base clapped, but AOC's supporters countered with shouts of, "What about families?" The debate intensified as Elena opened the floor to audience questions. A young woman, Maria, stood, her voice trembling. "I'm an El Paso teacher. My students are scared of deportation. Congresswoman, how can you help them feel safe?" AOC's expression softened, her voice steady. "Maria, I hear you. I've fought for immigrant families my whole career. H.R. 3602, which I co-sponsored, ensures accountability in federal custody. We need to stop treating children like threats and start treating them like kids." The crowd's progressive half erupted in applause, but some in Abbott's section shook their heads. Next, a middle-aged man, John, a local business owner, stood. "Governor, I've lost business because of border disruptions. What's your plan to keep us safe and thriving?" Abbott nodded, his tone firm. "John, I've been there. This week, I appointed Ray Bolton to lead the Texas Appraiser Board. Economic stability starts with leadership. We're investing in border security and infrastructure to keep businesses like yours running." His supporters cheered, but AOC's side whispered about ignoring the human cost. The turning point came when Elena asked a question that caught both off guard. "You've both faced criticism for your methods. What's one thing you've learned from the other's approach?" The room fell silent, the crowd leaning in. Abbott spoke first, his voice measured. "Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez's focus on community engagement. I respect that. I've held town halls too, like my recent FEMA meeting, but we differ on execution. Texas needs practical steps, not just ideals." A few in AOC's crowd nodded, surprised by his candor. AOC responded, her tone thoughtful. "Governor Abbott's emphasis on local leadership. I admire that. In New York, I've seen how local solutions matter. But I believe we can lead with compassion, not just enforcement. His veterans grants this week show commitment, but we need to extend that care to all communities." Abbott's supporters murmured in approval, caught off guard by her acknowledgement. The auditorium shifted. What began as a clash of opposites became a moment of unexpected reflection. Neither backed down, but their mutual recognition of each other's strengths, a rare moment of humility, left the crowd rethinking their assumptions. AOC supporters appreciated her push for compassion, while Abbott's base respected his focus on stability. Yet both sides saw value in the other's perspective. As the town hall ended, Elena Rivera closed with a nod to the audience. Two visions, one goal, a better America. Dialogue matters, even when we disagree. The crowd stood, applause mixing with murmurs as people pulled out their phones. AOC and Abbott shook hands, their expressions neutral but respectful, a stark contrast to the fire they'd brought earlier. The aftermath was immediate. Clips of the town hall spread across social media, trending with hashtags like #OcTownHall and #AbbottListens. A viral moment emerged when AOC acknowledged Abbott's local leadership, captioned, "When AOC gives props to Abbott, didn't see that coming." Another clip of Abbott praising AOC's community focus gained traction, with a comment reading, "Abbott showing respect? Maybe there's hope for dialogue." Progressive accounts praised AOC's humanity. AOC speaking for El Paso's kids, proud to support her, one user wrote. Conservative outlets highlighted Abbott's pragmatism. "Abbott knows Texas. AOC should learn from him," a commenter noted. Neutral voices on platforms like YouTube called it a rare moment of balance. "Both made points I didn't expect to agree with," a viewer posted. In El Paso, community reactions mirrored the online buzz. At a local diner, a group of teachers shared AOC's clip about protecting students, one saying, "She gets it. Our kids need hope." Across town, business owners replayed Abbott's promise of economic stability, one nodding, "He's keeping us safe, that's what matters." Yet both groups discussed the mutual respect shown, a small spark of unity in a divided space. AOC, back in her hotel, scrolled through the comments, her eyes lighting up at the support but pausing at critiques of her idealism. She thought of her recent bills, determined to prove her policies could work. Abbott, in his office, reviewed the same clips, noting the praise but also the calls for more compassion. His recent veterans grants reminded him of the balance he needed to strike. The El Paso town hall between AOC and Greg Abbott reflected the tensions of American society in 2025, polarization over border security, community needs, and leadership styles. AOC's recent push for H.R. 3562 and H.R. 3603 showed her focus on systemic change, while Abbott's grants and FEMA meetings highlighted his practical governance. Their mutual acknowledgement of each other's strengths revealed a lesson. Progress comes from listening, even to those we oppose. In a divided nation, where debates often play out on social media, this story reminds us to seek common ground. AOC's community focus and Abbott's local leadership can coexist if we prioritize dialogue over division. Subscribe to explore more stories of unexpected unity and share your thoughts below. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the next video.